Hello and welcome to the Happiness Jungle TV show. I am your guest host, CamiBaker.com, and today we have a guest with us whom I haven't actually had an opportunity to speak to before, and I find it really interesting with all the people that I interview. Some are local friends I've had for years, others are people that I've talked to a few times on Skype, etc., and some, like Tim Hyde, I haven't spoken to. However, we have a mutual friend, Michael Griffith, who is just a rock star in the business and online world. So I'm super excited to hear about how Tim helps all of us novice to get our message out through better technology. So Tim, introduce yourself to our viewers.
Hey Cami, look, absolutely a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity to come on your show and chat to you and all of your listeners and viewers out there in the internet land. Hey guys, hope you're well. Yeah, look, absolutely. We met through Michael Griffiths. He runs an organisation called the Partnership Club, which is all about entrepreneurs banding together and really helping each other to create a greater impact, which is fantastic. And well, we've been chatting on Facebook since we met through Michael and for a while now, and and really appreciate the opportunity to come on the show. Of course, my business is all about helping people win more clients. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time now, almost 40 years, which means I started when I was 6, of course. And the thing that I've always found really fascinating about business as an adult is that we kind of make it really hard on ourselves. We leave so much opportunity on the table just because we're not having enough conversations with people. And I've dedicated my business to really helping people do that, plug the leaks in their customer journey where all the money leaks out. Because I think, entrepreneurship is hard enough as it is without us leaving opportunities on the table.
Well, I just want to say it is very possible that you could have been in business since you were 6, because I personally started when I was 8 and saw that kids wanted gum and they had money in their pocket. So I bought gum and I brought it to school and I sold it for a 500% profit. So I'm sure that someone like yourself was doing something like that as a child too. As a matter of fact, how did you get started? What was your first experience in business?
Well, apparently I sold eggs and fresh produce at the Alice Springs markets when I was about 3 or 4 years old, but I don't kind of remember that. And I'm not entirely sure how I got started, but I'm going to blame Uncle Scrooge golden books. I saw Uncle Scrooge would dive into these piles of money and act like he was having so much fun. And to this day, I have no idea what Uncle Scrooge actually does. And if you jump onto Wikipedia, you'll probably discover that Uncle Scrooge is either a trust fund baby or some form of entrepreneur or something. But the first one I remember, when I first moved to Canberra in Australia, I started a circus, believe it or not. I had all the neighbourhood kids come around and dress up and act in my circus as animals and whatnot. And, it was a great opportunity for all the kids to have fun and get to know each other. And I was sort of getting to meet some new friends. And I was making all this money at the same time. And I remember one morning, one afternoon walking back from school, and I stopped in at the local shops and I bought, at that time, 100 1-cent lollies. I don't think you can buy 1-cent lollies anymore, but I bought this massive bag of lollies and ate them all on the way home. And I was just hooked after that. And whether it was on the sugar rush or the fact that I could turn money to sugar. This was a fantastic concept as a kid, and I think I'm going to keep doing this somehow.
Wow, very creative to start a circus right from the get-go. It's funny you use that. I use the P.T. Barnum example when I'm talking to my clients. I'm like, you don't have to be the smartest one. You don't have to, know how to do all this stuff. I read the book, P.T. Barnum's book of his autobiography several years ago, and I always think, all I have to do is be P.T. Barnum and bring the freaks around. If I bring all the freaks together, then I can put on the show, and that's exactly what you did. So that is very cool. And speaking of which, one of the freaks, and I use that term with endearment. I'm just joking, but one of the freak positions that I need is someone on my side helping me with that online presence that you're talking about, because for someone like myself, I'm so great face to face, hand to hand, belly to belly, eye to eye, physically in a room with people. But when it comes to being online and actually getting the people to click and show up for a webinar and actually put the credit card down for an online program has been a real struggle for me. Talk to us about, what you do to help people and how you decided to get into this niche.
I think one of the things around the sort of start of this century, I started a website called the Riot Act in Canberra with a bunch of mates, and we were seeing this opportunity. We were seeing this, this computer start to sort of appear on people's desktop in the workplace. And when I studied IT at uni, there was no internet. God, that makes me sound old. And we saw this as this thing that was suddenly appearing on people's desks as this new way of getting information and connecting and communicating with each other. And we started this business, just sort of just facilitating that conversation. We saw this need for people to talk and communicate, and through this new channel. And this is back before social media, of course, as well. And had eyeballs and thought, we'll sell these eyeballs to advertisers. And the problem I kept seeing was that advertisers would come back at the end of a campaign and say, hey, look, that new digital marketing thing that you were selling us didn't work. It didn't convert into customers. And I put my coding and kind of engineering hat on. I said, well, that's something's obviously broken in the process. It's either broken at our end in terms of putting your message in front of the right people, or it's broken somewhere through the process of awareness to kind of raving fan. And more often than not, what I found when working with clients is that they had leaks in what we call a funnel. There was leaks all through their sales funnel. Okay, so they wouldn't, the leads would come in, but they wouldn't capture them in a CRM system. So we wouldn't, elongate the number of conversations we were having. If we weren't ready to buy right now, those leads would get thrown back to the, into the pool. And I thought, there's got to be something wrong with this. There's got to be a better way of actually, if you start a conversation with somebody, how do you continue that conversation, to the point where that customer's ready to buy? And that's where I sort of got into this space of saying, if I want to kind of sell more advertising, I've got to teach my clients how to kind of mature their customer process and their customer acquisition process, so that they sold to the ones that were ready, the ones that weren't quite ready got put somewhere in order to continue that conversation until they will. Very much like we build our personal relationships. We don't go into a bar, try and have 10 kids on our first date. We've got to build the relationship first in order to, close the deal with that, that significant life partner. But our business relationships, we can't just survive on one marriage. It's got to have lots and lots of marriages.
So give us an example of someone that you've helped and where they were and what the process looked like and what happened.
Well, actually, I'll give you one. I was talking to a web developer that I was working with yesterday. She talks to her clients a lot around digital marketing maturity, but has never really looked at her own business. And, I think even in the 4 months we've been working together now, she's already doubled the amount of business that she's got. And she was like, when she sort of came to me to start with, she's like, I need more leads. And I'm like, well, you're connected to 400 people on LinkedIn. Somewhere in the next 5 years, all of those businesses will rebuild their website. So do you need more leads, or do you need a deeper conversation that when those clients do rebuild their websites, that you are top of mind and the go-to expert in your space?
Good point.
And how do you continue that conversation with people? Because if you just keep connecting with people and say, hey, do you need a website today? The answer is probably no. But do you need a website tomorrow, the day after that? The answer is probably yes. And so we need to look at, when we build our customer journey, how do we connect and build value with people right now, but also how do we be there when they are ready for us to help them?
So give us an example of what that looks like. I'm sure you helped her to create a funnel. We
have created a funnel. So one of the things we looked at is, firstly, making sure that she's got her message right, connecting to the right people in the right channels. You may have heard Russell Brunson talk about this. He says, you've got to have the right bait in the right pond. Otherwise, you're never going to catch the right fish. But then even sort of putting in a CRM, using what we now know as a sort of marketing automation technology to sort of continue that relationship and build the communication strategy on a more leveraged basis. So for her, we're building out not only what we call a lead magnet, so it's a piece of resource that really helps their customer, take the first step in that customer journey between where they are and where they want to be, but then continuing the conversation. So we have an indoctrination campaign that kind of adds real value up front, does ask the question if you're ready to buy right now, invites people into a workshop to find out more about what it is that she does and how she can help people. But then also building this long-term nurture campaign, which is a combination of email, phone messages, and even internal workflow to reach out to those prospects on a regular basis and say, hey, Cami, hope you're well. What's happening in your business right now? Is there anything I can help you with? And just being there to really help people and be genuinely generous with your time and information so that when that prospect is ready to buy, that you're top of mind, and they'll come say, hey, look, you've helped me, you've been such a great help to me. I'd love for you to have a chat with you about how we can redo our website. Right? Now, it doesn't matter whether websites or, prams or legal services or accounting, or, financial services or anything. If you can be that top of mind go-to when you need a product or need to replace a product, or a service, if you're one of the 3 or, 2, 3, 4, 5 brands that come to mind, you're going to sort of look at that as a real option. Right? When I've had one of these iPhones every year for the last 10 years since they came out, because that's top of mind for me.
Now, do you actually help your clients with the verbiage, with actually creating the content in the emails?
We do as well. Okay, because message is really important. It's one thing to have the technology, but it's just a tool. It really is just a tool. In the same way, that's very hard to put a nail in with a screwdriver. You need a hammer instead. The automation and the technology is only part of the puzzle. Right? There are lots of other parts. Right? You've got to have your message. You've got to have your sort of value proposition correct. You've got to be putting it in the right places. You've got to be talking to the right people. Your sales process needs to work. How you sell, needs to fit in. Your onboarding process needs to kind of, really give value to a customer. If you're selling a really crappy product to people and pushing it upon them, they're never going to buy it, and they're never going to buy it twice. And they certainly won't refer you to somebody else.
Well, I'll throw myself right under the bus. You mentioned if they're selling a crappy product. I've seen people that have a not so good product that they sell a ton of because they have the right funnel and the right marketing. And then there are some of us who have a great product and service who have suffered immensely with creating this process. So, for myself in the last 5 years, I'm quite sure I've invested, spent, wasted, tried probably $75,000, $80,000 on Infusionsoft, and right now I'm using MailChimp, and just the different technologies and the different assistants and the different people who had different ideas, etc. What are 2 or 3 pieces of advice you could give when someone is looking to bite the bullet and create this campaign? What should they be looking to? What kind of company to use? What kind of tool? All of it.
I think the tool needs to match your business outcome, and you need to kind of invest enough money in it as well. Just like launching a rocket, if you don't put enough fuel in the rocket, it's never going to get into the atmosphere. Right? It's never going to get into space. And I think that's the biggest mistake that people make, is thinking that I can just buy a technology like Infusionsoft, like MailChimp, off the shelf, and suddenly it's going to sort of solve everything that ails my business. Right? You really do need to engage someone to kind of unpack what it is that you need in your business, what you're trying to achieve, and then match the technology to what you're trying to achieve. It's not the other way around. We don't match your business process to the technology and change your business process for the technology. Right? We've got to go the other way. So that's the first piece of advice I would give. Secondly, invest in it, right? And it's not a point in time thing. I am constantly tweaking and building and adding stuff to my own Infusionsoft account. As I kind of mature my business, as I change my process, as I come up with new ideas, and as the technology changes as well, it's constantly evolving. The Infusionsoft of 10 years ago when I first started with it, compared to the Infusionsoft of today, is a very different product, a very different beast. And then we've got to use it. Right? So and that's probably the third piece of advice. If we don't use the technology to support our business process, it's not going to deliver the outcome. It's that tool in the toolbox that just gets rusty because we're not using it often enough.
So what do you do to stay on top of all this technology? Are you going to seminars, classes, webinars? Like, how do you keep it? Because I know the algorithms, et cetera, change all the time.
Yeah, I'm still on that. Look, I think one of the things that I do is I'm constantly in the industry. I'm sharing conversations with my peers, even who do the same business as me. So we're having conversations all the time about what it is. We're feeding that information back to the companies and suppliers of these technologies as well. I'm an avid reader of business books and podcasts and webinars and looking at what other people are doing, just in the marketing space. So people like, we were talking off air before about Gary Vaynerchuk, listening to what, Gary's got to say about different things, looking at Tony Robbins and, Jay Abrams, people in the sort of the business space about what's happening in business and where's business going to. I often listen to futurists as well about what, how technology is evolving. And there's a little bit of navel gazing as well. So, where do I think things are going and what are the conversations I'm hearing from business owners and the frustrations I'm hearing from business owners as well. So I'd say it's probably a whole range of spaces. But there wouldn't be a day go by where I'm not, trying to absorb information that other people are putting out there, both in the marketing automation space, CRM space, but also in that just general business conversation as well.
So who is a perfect client for you? Like if you could fill your day planner up with the ideal industry, individual, profession, et cetera, what's good for you?
Look, the client I love working with is one that's really hungry for growth. They're not afraid of using technology. They may not necessarily understand it, but they're not afraid of using technology in their business. They really know that there's a better way, but they may not necessarily know how to get there, and they're looking for that change. I work really well. I mean, I've worked with 20 and in 23 different countries with over 1,000 businesses. So everything from clairvoyance to mining companies and everything in between. So in terms of industry sector, I don't particularly mind. I do like working with knowledge professionals because it's one of those things, as you mentioned, Cami. We find it very difficult to articulate, a value proposition if we can't touch, look, touch, and feel it. Right? And that's a real challenge for those of us who sell our intellectual property in many cases. So I do like working with people who sell their knowledge as well. Mm-hmm. But it's really people who are kind of, I'm doing okay, I'm kind of stuck, I know there's a better way, and I'm trying to break through to that next level to create the impact that I want to create.
So as a person who's been in business since you were 6 years old and doing business in 23 countries, we got a lot of people watching us who are maybe thinking about starting a business. Maybe just hearing this conversation makes them feel overwhelmed. Oh my God, there's so much to learn, there's so much to do, and I don't understand that. Like, what are a couple of pieces of advice that you would give someone who's thinking about getting into business these days?
I think the first thing to think about when we're getting into business is that you've got to really love entrepreneurship. Right? You've got to love solving a problem for somebody.
Amen.
If you don't love that, you're going to find it a real struggle. And I think there's one of the things I find really frustrating is that we often bandy around these statistics around how 80, 95, 97% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. Right? If I look at statistics in Australia, and I'm not sure in the US, the real statistic is that most businesses close within the first 5 years. Very few businesses actually fail in the context of I'm actually in a worse position. Right? It's probably 15 to 20% of people actually end up in a worse position than where they started. But I think you've got to love it. And one of my early mentors used to be fond of saying that businesses don't fail, business owners burn out. Right? We do, as you do, we invest lots of money in stuff that we really don't understand, what it's going to do for us and how it's going to solve our problem. And we get so passionate about thinking that we can solve problem without really understanding whether the thing we are doing is actually a big enough pain point for someone that they're going to want to pay for it. And I recall watching the BBC version of Shark Tank, which is called Dragon's Den a few years ago, and this bright entrepreneur had solved the problem of getting the last bit of toothpaste out of a tube with this little widget that he put in the toothpaste tube. Right? It cost them 10 pence per tube to put this last bit of stuff in it, all to save 2 cents worth of product. Okay. And so we can get caught up with solving a problem that doesn't need to be solved.
That is so true.
But if the kids at school want gum and you have the ability to give them gum, and that is a problem that wants to be solved, and you can kind of, and you can facilitate and be that middleman between problem and solution.
You
can build a very successful business.
I had a mentor many years ago, and it's funny when people who invest are invested, people who pay attention. And I had a mentor that I invested $25,000 for 6 months to mentor me. And her words ring in my ear on a daily basis. And I think it's because I paid so much, I really paid attention. But she said, and as soon as I said that, I just lost it. How funny is that? How funny is that? I just lost my train of thought. Shame on me. That's funny. I never do that.
Look, I've always won that, if you're going to lose, don't lose the lesson.
True that.
Right? And another one I'm a big fan of, just in terms of sort of absorbing knowledge from people. When you read a book or you get a mentor, you're condensing their life's work into just a couple of hundred pages or sessions of engagement with somebody. So, if you're going to add, if you're going to win the war, of life, the battle of life, the more soldiers you have in your army, the more likely you are to win the battle. And every time you take on someone's knowledge, so from your mentor or a book or a webinar, just take that one thing and you're adding it to your repertoire, building your knowledge, then you're making increasing your chances of success, in your next thing.
As they say, experience is a very expensive teacher when you can actually invest in somebody else's experience to cut your time of learning in half. As a matter of fact, I have another new friend from Michael Griffith's group, Steve Brosman. And Steve mentioned to me the other day, he said, poor broke people spend a lot of time to save money, whereas rich, successful people spend a little bit of money to save a lot of time. And I've used that in many different ways since I've heard that. It's so true. When people are spending years trying to figure something out to save a little bit of money, what did that cost them over years of not just moving on and becoming successful and making the money that they could have been making?
That's right. I think as business owners, we tend to, and whether there's a thing, around lean methodologies and that sort of stuff, this lean startup craze that's come out of Silicon Valley, and whether we've taken that to heart to think we can't spend money as opposed to I'm just going to get a minimal viable product and try and launch it to market, is that we often start in business with not enough resources in our business. I still remember reading Alan Weiss's book, Getting Started in Consulting a few years ago, and he said, look, have a year of resources up your sleeve. Right? So if you know what it costs you to live for a year, put that aside and then you can start. Because that's the runway you need to get started. I made the mistake very early on of thinking that I'd been in IT, I can read HTML, that I could build my own website, and I spent 8 hours one day trying to deploy WordPress, thinking that I'm going to save a few bucks. And at the end of it, I just got super frustrated, sent it to my developer in the Ukraine, and said, "Can you please just deploy WordPress for me?" Now he came back 32 minutes later. With not only WordPress installed, but my template set up and my user logins all set up as well, and it cost me a grand sum of $7.15.
And now you can just move on, and it's not frustrating, and you're not losing sleep over it. I remember what my mentor said. She said, because we were talking about how people will hang on to an idea that doesn't work, and they'll try to make something work just because they're in love with it. She taught me. She said, sell it. And then create it. Sell it and then create it. Because if you can sell it, then that means somebody wants to buy it. Somebody's interested in it. And if you sell it, so for example, coaching services, if you sell a package and then create it, the person's basically paying you to create your program. So sometimes I'll say to my clients who are so hung up on creating PDFs and PowerPoints and writing their book, and they want to create all this content, but they don't even know if anybody wants to buy it yet. And so I'll say, well, if you could do what you do, if somebody were to pay you $5,000 to do what you do, could you give them that transformation? Yes, I could. Awesome. Sell it. Go sell it to somebody, and then create it so that you're not spending months or years and thousands of dollars creating a program and a product that you don't even know, you haven't even done any market research to see if they actually want it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think many of us come to business with a particular skill set, as you say. We're plumbers or we're technicians. The E-Myth, Michael E. Gerber's his book talks a lot about how we come to business as technicians and thinking, really don't like my boss, look how much money they're making, I can do this better, and away we go. And suddenly we're really struggling to find clients. And the most important skill that I think we can bring to our business is the ability to market and sell our product. We can find someone else to do it. I was talking to another company yesterday, and they'd like to make $300,000 a year, in their pocket. They're working currently 90 hours a week, but they'd like to be working 40. And it's a little bit crazy for them right now. And yet when I sort of probed in and said, well, what's your time worth? I think we worked it out that if they want to make 300,000, working 40 hours a week for 48 weeks a year with a few weeks holidays in there, their time is worth $156 an hour. And yet they're answering the phones. They're doing the books. They're, sweeping the floors in the shop front. All of which are tasks that could be outsourced at significantly less than $156 an hour. And that time could then be re-put into $156 an hour tasks that actually drive their business forward. And that's a big mistake we make as business owners at almost at any level, is that we really don't focus on the thing that, we love doing, that drives our business forward, and we could do all day long and be super happy about it.
That's why I learned a long time ago to not even try to figure out what it is that you do. Like, all the technology part is not my bag, and I know that I'm wasting a lot of time and I'm frustrating myself. And to your point, for all of us to stay in our genius zone is exactly where we should be and be able to delegate other things. Well, Tim Hyde, 27 minutes goes by very fast on this TV show, and I'm afraid we've come to the end. I'm so glad we had an opportunity to share. I'd love to have you come on and do a webinar or some kind of Zoom or something in my mastermind group on Facebook, and I want to encourage all of our viewers to check you out and to reach out if you're the best at baking pies or being an attorney or a real estate agent or whatever it is you're the best at, hire someone like Tim to help you with the part that you don't understand. Tim, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Cami. It's been an absolute pleasure being here, and I really enjoyed chatting and getting to learn more about you as well.
Nice. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.